Palestinians in Gaza celebrated on January 15th as mediators announced a ceasefire agreement between Hamas and Israel, marking the end of 15 months of devastating conflict. The truce, brokered by Qatar and Egypt, is scheduled to take effect on 19 January and promises a phased cessation of hostilities, hostages release, and expanded humanitarian aid. The agreement comes after months of negotiations in Doha, with Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani confirming the deal's details.
It gives us great pleasure in Qatar, Egypt, and the United States to announce the success of the joint mediation efforts and the fact that the two belligerents in the Gaza Strip have reached a deal on the prisoner and the hostage swap and announced a ceasefire in the hopes of reaching a permanent ceasefire between the two sides, as well as allowing the access of large quantities of relief aid to the Palestinian brothers in the Gaza Strip. First off, I would like to thank our partners in the Arab Republic of Egypt, the United States of America, notably the envoy to the Middle East of the President-elect, Steve Witkoff, as well as the MENA coordinator at the U.S. National Security Council, Mr. Brett McGurk, for their efforts that contributed to push these negotiations forward and reach this deal. I would also like to express my deepest thanks and gratitude to our brothers from the Arab Republic of Egypt and His Excellency the Minister Hassan Rashad, who have contributed and made serious efforts in collaboration with their Qatari partners in order to make this deal a success. With the approval of both sides and the negotiators on this deal in order to finalize all executive measures for tonight, and after that we will be taking all the internal measures, the Israeli government will be taking the internal measures, after which the agreement will enter into effect on Sunday, January 19th. The exact timing will be identified later. The phase 1 of the agreement will go on for 42 days, and it will include a ceasefire and the withdrawal of Israeli forces to the east away from populated areas. Israeli forces will then be positioned along the Gaza border, and which will allow for the swap of prisoners as well as the swap of remains and the return of the displaced people to their residences. This will also facilitate the travel of wounded and sick people in order to receive treatment. Phase 1 also includes an increased flow of relief and humanitarian aid to all parts of the Gaza Strip, as well as the rehabilitation of hospitals, health centers, bakeries, and allowing the entry of fuel and civil defense equipment, as well as basic necessities for displaced people who lost their houses as a result of the war. In phase 1, Hamas will be releasing 33 Israeli captives, including civilian women and female recruits, as well as children, elderly people, as well as civilian ill people and wounded, in return for a number of prisoners who are being held in Israeli prisons. Regarding phases 2 and 3, the details will be finalized during the implementation of phase 1. The state of Qatar reaffirms the necessity of both sides committing to the implementation of all 3 stages of the agreement in order to prevent civilian bloodshed and in order to shield our region from the consequences of this conflict and ensure that we have lasting peace in the region. Qatar will continue its joint efforts with the Arab Republic of Egypt and the United States of America to ensure that all sides are following through with their commitments and engagements and ensure that all 3 stages will be implemented. We look forward to seeing regional and international efforts coming together in order to assist with relief and humanitarian aid and supporting the United Nations in its attempts to enter aid into the Gaza Strip.
However, the humanitarian crisis remains dire, with aid agencies preparing to scale up relief efforts. Despite the truce announcement, Israeli airstrikes and ground operations continue, with Gaza's Ministry of Health reporting 30 more fatalities since the agreement's disclosure. This brings the total Palestinian death toll to 46,707, with over 110,000 wounded since October 7, 2023. Meanwhile, Hamas-led attacks on Israel during the conflict's outset resulted in 1,139 Israeli deaths and over 200 hostages taken. Hamas official Izzat al-Rishid hailed the deal as meeting all the group's conditions, including the withdrawal of Israeli forces, the return of displaced Palestinians, and a permanent end to the war. In a statement, Hamas described the agreement as a turning point for Palestinians. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked U.S. President Joe Biden and President-elect Donald Trump for their roles in advancing the agreement. Netanyahu also pledged to visit Washington soon to discuss further steps. While Israel's security cabinet is expected to approve the deal, some members of Netanyahu's coalition, including Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, have expressed opposition. The truce, if successful, could ease tensions across the Middle East, where the conflict has stoked violence in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and the Israeli-occupied West Bank. U.S. President Joe Biden described the ceasefire as a turning point and highlighted the need to alleviate the immense suffering caused by the war. The ceasefire's announcement coincides with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration 20 January. Trump took to social media to declare the agreement a result of his administration's historic victory in November. While the truce provides a glimmer of hope, obstacles remain. Families of Israeli hostages have expressed concerns about potential delays in implementation, and violence continues to escalate on the ground. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres stressed the importance of prioritizing humanitarian relief in Gaza, while international organizations like the Red Cross are preparing to scale up their operations.